I see 6 attendees, which is more than 0 attendees, and so I'm treating that as the signal to get started. Welcome everyone to our transfer admission panel. My name is Dr. Keith Shaw. I'm the director of the transfer program, and we're really excited to have you on board. Here's our plan for the next hour. So myself and my 3 colleagues, who will shortly introduce themselves, are planning to essentially walk you through what we hope will be your first year at Princeton when you make the wise choice to join us in the fall. We want to be able to answer some of the questions that you have, but we figure it might be useful for you to get a rough idea of what the arc of the year looks like, figuring that that might jostle free some questions that you might not otherwise have thought of. Before we get started, I guess we need to issue the really obvious caveat that this is a really, really weird year. And so a lot of you have what are probably some very, very reasonable questions about what things are going to look like in the fall and beyond. And the answers to those questions are answers that we would love to have too. The university is very much trying to figure out exactly what this summer and this fall and this coming academic year is going to look like. As with everybody else, we're very hopeful that we're going to be able to introduce students to the campus as soon as possible. Everyone wants that to happen. When we did a panel like this last year, I thought we were being really forward-looking and technologically savvy because we were doing this thing called Zoom that was new and exciting. But most of us have lived here for a lot of the last 9 or 10 weeks, and it's not quite as exciting as it used to be. But Princeton is going to make the decision that is the best for the safety of the students, and we're going to work to make this experience as good as it can possibly be. So with that, let me introduce 3 of my colleagues, one of whom most of you have already been in contact with or spoken to, so I'll let him go first. Alex.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex Buston. I am the Director of Transfer and Military and Veteran Admission at Princeton, and I'm really excited to be talking to you, even if not in person, at least virtually through the webinar today.
Awesome. Cecily?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Cecily Swanson. I'm the Director of Studies at Maddie College.
And Sylvia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sylvia Rodriguez, the Associate Director of Financial Aid.
Okay, so our titles and where we work probably give you some sense of what it is that we do, but we figured it would kind of be useful for you to walk through different points in the yearly calendar to have a sense of what students are focused on and how our various offices can help you. We'll pause periodically to be able to answer some of your questions, and we will try not to go into lecture mode so that we have plenty of time at the end to answer questions that might not happen to be covered by this chronology. I also want to remind everyone that we are going to have a second panel at which you can be introduced to many of our lovely transfer students. You are part of the 3rd cohort, and our current students are super excited to have the new group of students join them. They're really excited to meet you. They're really excited to talk to you, and that's going to be a really great opportunity to do that. So this is going to be the hopefully not that boring administrative panel to be followed by the vastly more exciting Thursday student panel. But let's get started. So even though this counts as recent history rather than forward-looking, we thought it would actually be really useful for you all to get a sense of how we arrived at this situation where we're super proud to be able to admit you to Princeton and hope to enroll you in the fall. And I want to just turn that over to Alex for a bit to talk about what that process looks like and why you should all feel really good about being in the position that you're in. So let me turn it over to Alex.
Sure, thanks, Keith. So as I mentioned, I manage all of our admission processes for transfer students and military and veteran students and so forth. And to state the obvious, I work basically in every process that from any student beginning to consider the application up until the application and admission review process up until you actually get to campus. So a little bit of background, as I think some of you may be aware, Princeton decided to reinstate their transfer program in January in 2016 over a 2-year process or so to enroll the first cohort in the fall of 2018. So the fall 2020 cohort, you guys are the 3rd cohort, as Keith said. And it's something we're really excited about because it was an initiative by the university to continue to increase accessibility and increase the diversity of our student body, bringing students from all kinds of backgrounds, not just geographically, but in terms of life experiences, what they're doing, traditional students, non-traditional students, community college students, veterans, and everything in between. So that's involved a lot of work of not just kind of, okay, let's hope they apply, but actually getting out there and working with those students and organizations working with those students to let them know, hey, we're accepting transfers now because we weren't for many, many years, and really create those relationships. So that's involved me and my team in our office getting involved with community colleges, organizations that are serving community college students, obviously, but also veterans as well. Organizations beyond that, as we've also had good relationships with, not just the colleges like Saddleback College and Miami-Dade College are definitely very big ones. Also those in New Jersey, Mercer County Community College right in our backyard, Union County College, the oldest college in New Jersey, but also organizations that work with those students. Jack Kent Cooke and their transfer scholarship, really good relationships with military organizations like Service to School, Leadership Scholar Program, the Warrior Scholar Project, which we're a host campus. So kind of developing those relationships with those organizations, working with the students to the point of where we actually speak to those students when they're considering applying. And I know I've definitely talked to you, or maybe even met some of you before you got here and before you actually submitted the application. And so I like to think of it as the beginning of that relationship with Princeton, and then kind of continuing to work with those students even after they decide they're going to enroll. And I think it's a connection that, while I don't work as closely with you all after you get in the door and from an academic advising standpoint or anything like that, our students are really involved and excited about this process too, and about being these pioneers, this building of this new cohort for our transfer and our veteran students, but also contributing to those recruiting efforts. And that's something that we do year round. So while we're at the moment in our office of admitting this cohort, we're already looking ahead to the future cohorts and recruiting. And we definitely absolutely use students, current students, to help with that perspective through whether it's actually traveling with us on recruiting visits or speaking to students. I pass, prospective students off by email or phone all the time. Some of you have already hopefully been contacted, I imagine, from some of our students. So it's a really exciting part to be, group to be involved with. And as Keith said, we're still working with that with those students constantly. There will be a panel later this week where you can chat with some of our current students, and then we also have, if you don't want to get involved in a Zoom webinar or anything, we also have our Tiger Talks on the preview website. I definitely recommend if you want to get together with a one-on-one conversation with students. So a lot of opportunities to do that, and I think it's continuing this wheel of building this cohort and looking forward to our future transfer students.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. Since I'm imagining I'm talking to 11 attendees who are vastly more technologically savvy than I am, I just want to draw attention to the question and answer feature that should be on the bottom bar in the interface. If you do have questions as we go, please post them in there, and we will take a shot at answering as many as we can. Some will probably hold towards the end, but if there are some that are kind of relevant to what we're talking about right now, we're happy to field them in real time. We want to shift ahead. So talking to a couple of you on the phone over the last few days, I've gotten different versions of the question. Okay, so I agree to come. First of all, good choice. You made the right one. What happens next? So we want to think a little bit about what the summer looks like, right? Because very quickly, you're going to be thinking about things like housing and dining and financial aid and picking classes and advising and summer programming. There's a lot going on at Princeton, even if a lot of it this summer is not going to be on campus. And so we just kind of want to give you a sense of what the summer is going to look like before things pick up in the fall. And I feel like we should lead with one of our big guns. One of the things that makes Princeton so spectacular is precisely the financial aid resources made available. And so I think, Sylvia, if it's okay, I'd like to start with you to talk a little bit about how that will look and what students should expect this summer.
Absolutely. So if you've already received an aid decision, over the summer, you just want to make sure that you're looking at your portal and that you're making sure that anything that might be outstanding, so for example, the award acknowledgement, or if you received a tentative aid decision, that you're looking to see if there's anything outstanding that the aid office may need to finalize your award. You also want to make sure that you either enroll or opt out of the student health plan. That is something that typically happens throughout the summer. And then the other important summer thing is the bill for the fall semester. So that's typically available in July and due in August. So I always recommend that you just log on to your student bill and take a look, make sure that you know whether you have a balance, how to pay the balance. That's something that our office can walk you through that process. If you have any questions, you can always call us, set up an appointment with the counselor, and we're happy to go over that. So over the summer, it's really sort of housekeeping items. You want to make sure that you're getting set up to start the fall semester.
Excellent. Thank you, Sylvia. And again, if any of you have questions, I imagine some will be about financial aid. Feel free to post them. But going into the summer, so I've also gotten a lot of questions about when do I pick classes? What does that look like? How do transfer students fit into the curriculum? In some ways, that's a complex answer. In some ways, it's pretty simple because it's not very different from any other student. Cecily, as one of our directors of studies, is one of the people who know the curriculum inside and out. And I think it would be really helpful, Cecily, if you could talk us a little bit through, I mean, first of all, what you do, what a director of studies does, but also what does the kind of advising structure look like for students over the summer as they make the transition into the fall?
Absolutely. Let me start with the first question there, which is just, let me talk a little bit about the Princeton's residential college system. So I'm the director of studies at Maddie. What does that mean? Good question. Your res college, so you're going to each be assigned to a residential college. And your residential college is home to a dean, a head of college, that's a professor who works with the college, has a house attached to the college, and generally sets the spirit and tone of the college. And there's a dean who is overseeing the office, and in particular, the dean is the point person for the academic life of juniors and seniors. Then there's a director of studies. Primarily, colleagues in the other residential colleges work with first years and sophomore students on their academic life and trajectory. And then there's a director of student life, and director of student life is there to help with all manner of your extracurricular and co-curricular life. And then the college also has two other support staff, people who are doing awesome stuff all the time to keep the college life going. So your res college staff, we're your people to help you with this transition to Princeton. And we really are prepared for any and all questions and are eager to help you feel comfortable with your new Princeton identity. So for those of you, and I think that's all of you who are first years or sophomores upon entering, you're going to get to know your director of studies. It's our role, and it's our great passion to help you find a satisfactory course of study at Princeton. So let me back up into the summer. There's going to be a bunch of forms we're going to ask you to fill out that help us get to know you as students. And we want you to take those forms seriously because it really does inform how we connect you with a faculty advisor. I'll talk more about that, and how you start thinking about your fall courses. So we are debuting this summer, in fact, a little online academic advising mini online course called ClassPath. Take that seriously. There's going to be guided exercises in there to help you think about your courses for next year and for your intellectual trajectory at Princeton. And then you'll be filling out a program form, an AB or BSc program form, depending on your degree candidacy that you've chosen, with another form that comes before. And that program form, you have a lot of opportunity there to describe your academic interests. And the more details you are, the better, because then your director of studies reads each of those forms for the students in our college and assigns you to a faculty advisor. And that person is going to be another important advisor for your thinking about course enrollment. I think I'm getting ahead of myself because now I'm getting to the fall and class selection. So I'll stop there, and I think I'll talk again in a little bit.
Excellent. Thank you, Cecily. While Cecily was talking, Sylvia, we got a question about the financial aid process. I'm wondering if you would mind fielding it. The question was, in general, how long after submitting the completed financial aid package are they likely to hear back?
So typically it takes about 5 to 7 business days to receive a decision once we have a completed application and all of your documents submitted. However, if you find that you are coming up close to that 5-6 day mark and you haven't heard anything, feel free to reach out to our office. You can send us an email at faoffice@princeton.edu, or you can give us a call, and a counselor would be happy to walk through your application and whether we're missing anything to make it complete.
Excellent, thanks. We also have a question from Lane about, as a married student, how he fits in the residential college system. I'll partly defer to Cecily here, but what I will say is all students are affiliated with a residential college, whether you're living in kind of traditional student housing in the colleges themselves, or whether you're living in married housing or in graduate apartments. So we have several buildings that married students and students with children live in, and each of them, I think, to this point have been part of, tell me if I'm wrong about this, Cecily, either Forbes or Butler or Whitman so far. So I don't think Maddie has yet had at least a transfer married student. Is that right? Oh no, you had one.
We did, and he and his wife, in fact, lived in the college itself because we had some suites that are for graduate students that have kitchens and for like a full apartment in the college. But as Keith was saying, even if you're not living in our actual college housing stock, you're living in graduate housing or married student housing, you're still identified with a residential college, and you can think of it as an important way to connect with advising resources. So academic advising, student life advising, programming, because the colleges host a lot of programming, intellectual programming, professors coming to have dinner, more co-curricular programming. We had a really popular weekly knitting night that one of our trans students partners actually came to every week. And that was a group that included staff and faculty and students. It wasn't just first year college students in the traditional sense. So there's just a ton of cool ways to intersect with your res college, even if you're not technically living in Maddie College's housing stock.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to note here too that for students who are coming with families, we want your family members to feel like you're part of the Princeton community too. And of course, it's going to be the case that a lot of the resources that are made available to you through the res colleges are academic specific in a way that may not be quite as interesting to family members or children, and much more interesting and pertinent to you. But nonetheless, we make a lot of opportunities available for spouses in particular to be able to be part of that community. I mean, in particular, the college staff are super excited to meet those people, and we really like when they can kind of come to events and feel like they're part of not just Princeton, but also the residential college. Sylvia, we also got a question about how living in married housing affects the financial aid award. Do you want to field that one?
The cost of attendance for a student is based on a single student cost of attendance. Cost of attendance guidelines dictate that we cannot include the cost of any other person in the student's cost of attendance. And so therefore, whether you're in a more expensive or less expensive unit, the aid award is not impacted, because what we're considering is the cost of attendance of the student.
Excellent, thanks. One, and we're perfectly happy to come back to further questions about this later. One last thing I'd like to say about summer before we make the transition to the fall is Princeton has really robust summer bridge programming. And one of the things that's really important to us is that you have the opportunity to participate in that. Obviously, this year it's going to be different because it necessarily will be online. But if you enroll with us, one of the things that you can look forward to is an invitation to participate in that. One of the things that it will make available to you is the opportunity to take a 4-credit class during the summer entitled Ways of Knowing. That's a class that is a really good introductory seminar to how the humanities are taught at Princeton. And that can be useful really regardless of what your major is. Like other schools, and you probably saw in your credit audit letter that came with your admissions package, Princeton has a series of general education requirements that every student, including the transfers, needs to meet. Taking this class, Ways of Knowing, meets the epistemology and cognition one. And so that's a really useful thing to do, to be able to knock out a course credit and then also meet a gen ed requirement in many of your cases. So this is not something that is required. You can turn us down if you have other summer plans. We totally understand, but it's something you're very welcome to do. And it's a nice opportunity to get kind of an early taste of what academic life is like at Princeton. as part of that package of the summer programming, we would also invite you to be able to attend what we call our STEM boot camps. This is going to be a 2-week opportunity in August. I think it starts August 10th, to be able to participate in a not for credit class, but basically an introduction to how Princeton teaches science, engineering, and math courses. And we've learned that one of the transition bottlenecks that some of our students face is that, while Princeton STEM courses are difficult and rigorous, of course they are, very often it's just learning how those courses are taught differently from the way students have learned STEM material before. Having an early introduction to that can be super useful. So this is something that I can talk to any of you about one-on-one. You'll be receiving an invite after you choose to enroll, but it's just something to think about. Of course, totally optional. If you already have summer plans that you can't or don't want to break, that's totally fine. But I think a lot of our students have found that valuable in the past. So let's move to the fall. So we're going to treat this basically as middle of August, when we're making the transition out of summer programming and into selecting classes. And Cecily, I think you did a really nice job before of building suspense for what happens when that process happens. So why don't I give you the floor and you explain how it is that our transfer students are going to be both advised on how to select their classes, then actually physically do it.
Thanks. So I'll describe our normal process, and we all know that we're not totally sure how we're going to be operating in the fall. Although I think I can safely say we're not going to be in big auditoriums of people. So some parts of this I'll just slightly modify, but I don't actually. I should go back. I can't safely assume anything. So I'm going to just say some basics here. After we get that form of yours and read over your academic interests, as I said, we'll place you with group you with a faculty advisor. And this is a really special thing about Princeton, that we have every student is assigned a faculty advisor, so the Princeton professor who is there to help you think about that transition to Princeton and through to a department and through your course of study. So you'll have an opportunity when you to connect with your faculty advisor in a group format with the other advisees that have assigned that advisor. So that's about 12 to 14 people, and talk through general questions, any concerns you're having, or just general sort of express excitement about what you're about to be getting involved in. And then you'll have the opportunity to sit down one-on-one with that faculty advisor and pick your classes. Before you do that, you'll have connected with other people who are there to help you. You'll have had the opportunity to talk with upper class students who are trained to help you think through course selection. They're called peer academic advisors. And one of their roles is to connect with entering students and talk with them about course selection before they do it. Then you get to fill out another form. And that form is more specific than that more general form you filled out. It's called the academic planning form. And in that form, you're going to list courses you're interested in. You will have been assigned to your writing seminar. And in fact, I'll let Keith talk more about that in a second. So we know one of your courses is already going to be a placeholder in your schedule. And then you'll chat with your faculty advisor, think through the kind of courses you're going to be taking. For some of you, you might already have a very clear sense of what major you want to do. I want to say and stress that we still want you to feel like you're exploring, and there's very likely lots of room to explore, even for those of you who are starting as sophomores. You may think you're sure of a major, but we want to help you even slightly less sure as you experiment and explore with our curriculum. And that's what your faculty advisor is there to do. Your director of studies or your dean, we're here to help you with any other questions you might have about your academic life. So one thing you'll learn about coming to Princeton is how sort of resource rich we are. And part of what I see my role being and the college office being is actually to help you figure out how to access resources, because you might get here and think, whoa, there's so many mentors and people want to help me. So you actually have people who are there to help you get that help. I will pass it over to Keith if he wants to talk about writing some, or I can also clarify anything because I think I just shared a lot of information.
Well, while they decide if they have any questions, I'll talk about writing seminar. Cecily was kind enough to send that to me because that's a class you'll be taking with me. So if you enroll, Princeton has a writing requirement, which is the one thing that can't be satisfied with transfer credit. Prior to being in this position, I was a director in Princeton's writing program, and so that's a course that's near and dear to my heart. It's also a course that we've customized for transfer students because you're all coming in with a lot of writing instruction. You've already demonstrated that you're successful academic writers, and we've discovered that the needs for transfer students making their way into Princeton are a little bit different, and so the course is designed to account for that. So as you know, one of the ways that the Princeton curriculum is distinct is that every student has to write a senior thesis. And so that's independent work in the department that is advised by a faculty member, but is designed to be a genuine contribution to knowledge in a field. That's an amazing opportunity for undergraduates to do because I just described a thing that mostly graduate students do. Cecily and I, I'm sure, both remember our dissertations very well. And so again, it's a great opportunity, but it's also a pretty heavy responsibility, and it's not a fair thing to kind of just ask students to do. You need to learn how to manage a large project like that. And most of Princeton's departments, not only do they have a senior thesis, but they have what are called junior papers, which are basically 1 semester long mini theses. So particularly for those of you who are coming in as sophomores, this is a way of saying that the moment you arrive on campus, you're kind of on the clock for independent work. It's only 12 months away. And so we want to make sure that we design a seminar environment that gets you ready to be able to do that work while also giving you the freedom to explore the academic questions and cultivate the methodological expertise that you're going to need to be able to do that work. So it's different from the other first year writing seminars in a number of ways. And I also hope that you're going to find it to be a super valuable component of your academic experience because you'll think you'll be able to see the direct connection between the work you do in that class and the independent work that you'll do in your major, regardless of what your major ends up being. I myself am a political scientist by training, but as I've said to a number of you, you're going to be teaching me in that class things about your field and what it does and how it asks questions and how it finds answers. And that's part of what's fun about it. We're all going to be kind of learning from the really varied expertise that you have all accumulated in your careers to this point, and with the work you're going to be putting in over the summer and the fall. So that's part of what that class is about. Cecily, did you want to add anything at the end of that, or did that seem right?
Yeah, that seems right. I think the only thing I was going to add is that, one thing you're going to be talking about with your faculty advisor as you put together that fall course load is just making, there's going to be some consideration of distribution requirements and then some consideration of prerequisites for possible majors. So those of you who are sophomores, it'll be, there's even more reason to take those forms seriously and to have those conversations because, you will have some important early decision making that you're going to be making.
Right, thank you. So we did get a question about the summer course I was talking about before, for which there's the epistemology and cognition credit. And the question was, if I have transfer credits that already meet that, does that essentially mean that the course doesn't have to be fulfilled with transfer credits? Yes. The full answer to that is a complicated one, but one of the things that I want to suggest to all of you that would be coming in as sophomores with 9 courses, another thing that we're going to do over the summer is comb through your transcript very carefully and make sure that we're bringing in the right 9 classes that make the most sense for your course of study, right? So our default is that what it says on that transfer letter, where there are 9 classes for the sophomores that we're accepting as credit, that's what we accept. That's what we expect to accept as credit. But there's the possibility that we'll revise that for any number of reasons. In particular, if you end up that's very different from the one that you indicated in your admissions information, it's possible that looking through your transcript and swapping out 1 or more classes will actually make a lot more sense for you for a whole variety of reasons. And we're open to doing that in conversation with advisors in those departments. So that's a thing that might happen. I should also say that one of the things that is distinct about our program for students who come in as sophomores is you maintain the option, if you would like, to enter as a first-year student instead. Many of you might have zero interest in doing that, but a number of our students have made that call, not because of any academic difficulty and not because they were concerned about the rigors of the program, but they just decided that there was a lot of value in having the 4 years. The really nice thing, going back to how generous our financial aid program is that your award attaches to you for the entire period of your enrollment. So it's not like you would be worse off financially as a result of doing the 4 years instead of 3. Sylvia, if you want to jump in on that one, feel free. I want to make sure I describe that correctly.
That's right. So you do apply for aid every year, but there is no sort of stipulation that if you have the option to come in as a sophomore that you have to, and therefore only have 3 years of aid available. So you can choose to do the freshman, the first year versus sophomore, and still apply for aid every year. So we review for aid every year. If nothing has drastically changed in your family's income or asset situation, then you can expect a very similar award, a very similar level of family contribution every year, right? Because those are the things we're looking at. We're looking at income and assets and changes in those things and how that can impact the level of aid. So no, that's not a concern. You should definitely not be concerned about not being able to apply for aid for a 4th year.
Thanks, Sylvia. Is there anything else you would like to add for what they could expect from financial aid just over the fall semester? And what is your office involved in? What might the students be concerned about?
Sure. So throughout the fall semester at the beginning, so if we're talking mid-August and sort of into the beginning of the semester, that's when our office will be reaching out to students if we need any additional documentation. So if, for example, we process your FAFSA and find that you have been selected for verification, we may be reaching out at that point for additional paperwork. Those communications will come in the form of an email to your Princeton email address. And so at that point is when we would expect that you'd then begin a communication or conversation with someone in our office about getting that information into us. If you're bringing in a scholarship, September, October is the time to do that. But we also reach out to you if we need additional information from a donor. And then lastly, in the fall, the spring bill is typically available in December and due in January. So that is another thing that you want to keep an eye on. And then just sort of in general, our office really works with students on a variety of things throughout the semester. If students are interested in, for example, maybe borrowing a small loan for something like a computer, that's something that you would communicate with someone in our office about. Also, when students are going abroad, they first work with the Office of International Programs, but then discuss the budget abroad with our office. I know that that's still up in the air and is to be seen for the coming year, but that's just to give you an idea of the sorts of things we're talking to students about throughout the semester.
And Alex, I suspect you or members of your staff met many of our student attendees today last fall. Do you want to give us a brief look at what it is that you and your colleagues are up to during that semester?
Sure. Yeah, fall is one of the biggest travel seasons for us because our application reading season starts later in kind of November through May and so forth. So fall is a big time for us to travel. We do some as well in summer and spring as well. So we'll visit colleges and organizations nationwide, worldwide as well, to speak to students and also the organizations. And absolutely starting to be able, as we've built this transfer program, like I said, incorporate student voices in that as well, whether it's kind of like you working with us on some of our publications and telling your story, or like I said, even traveling with us. So we definitely, I brought a student with me, a former Marine Corps veteran, to Camp Pendleton, where we do recruiting at least once a year. And I think, I can explain to you about how the process works and a little bit about what Keith and Cecily and Sylvia tell you on that up front, but no one can convey the student perspective as well as the student themselves. So it's really a valuable resource. And so, again, I would open up to any students who are interested in working with us on that, whether it's actually physically recruiting, or if you want to just, get involved, like some of the students you've already heard from as well. You're always happy to have more support and help you speak to your future classmates.
Awesome. So we got an additional question about the summer, which was the relationship between the financial aid package and the 4-credit summer course. One thing that I should clarify is when I said 4-credit, I meant FOR, not FOUR. And you should know that at Princeton, every course is 1 credit. So if you're in the AB program, you're going to do 31 course units. If you're in the BSE program, you're going to do 36 course units. But unlike a lot of colleges, we don't have sort of, here's the 5 credit versus the 3.5 credit versus the 1.7599 credit course, which I guess does keep things a little simpler. More importantly to the question, the summer program's free. So if you decide to join us for Ways of Knowing, that's a course that we're paying for. You don't need to worry about it. So it's 7:35. Let's do a quick wrap through spring, see if we can keep this one fast. And then that way we can kind of open it up for Q&A. Cecily, if I could start with you, I mean, particularly since for our students, it's, or at least our AB students, it's the end of the sophomore year where they're making major choices. That's an important choice. Could you talk a little bit about what that looks like and kind of the rest of the advising structure during the spring?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of resources to help you think through what Princeton calls your concentration and what the rest of the world calls your major, although we use both terms at Princeton. One thing to say is that if you enter as a first-year student, as an AB student, you've got time. You're going to be declaring at the end of your sophomore year. If you enter as a first-year BSE student, you're actually going to choose your concentration at the end of your first year. So there's a slightly different timeline for making that decision. There are lots of resources to help both AB and BSE students think through their concentration. Departments hold open houses. The engineering program holds a big set of open houses so you can explore those different departments. And then each AB department also holds opportunities and open houses to intersect and learn more about what happens in those fields. I think it's never too early, even if you're starting as a first-year AB student, to start just thinking, what are a variety of options I'm interested in, and how can I like truly explore, like really surprise myself? And we talk a lot about parallel planning, of having a couple majors in mind as you work through the curriculum, so that you don't get to the end of the spring of your sophomore year and think, oh no, I hate whatever it is, or I really love this thing and I wish I had taken more classes in it. As I said, you have all of us here to help you. Keep lots of options open. So I'm just stressing something that will be stressing your whole time here. And then that sophomore spring, you'll be talking with if you're an AB student, you're going to be talking with a director of undergraduate studies in the department to talk about the major and select courses for your junior year. You'll have done that as a BSA student your first year with director of undergraduate studies for your department. And then you're going to be talking with students who are the best source of advice about what it means to be in a concentration. And we try to make sure there's lots of opportunities to informally and more formally connect with upper class students and talk about why they ended up in a major, what they love about it, what independent work looks like in it. Princeton has an awesome online database of senior theses. It's fun to check it out. You can go and learn a lot about these different fields by exploring that. So yeah, spring of sophomore year is a very exciting time. Spring of first year is a exciting time to start thinking about, okay, next year is my sophomore year. What am I going to be doing to keep those couple options open for a major?
Thank you, Cecily. Sylvia, I wonder if I could impose on you for 2 things. So one, we have a question about options for part-time jobs on and around campus, but also one of the great things about Princeton is this sort of infinite set of opportunities that students can pursue, many of which come over the summer, many of which you need to apply for early. I should just get this over with now. I'm being Zoom bombed. This is Little Bear. This is my assistant director for the transfer program. He'll apparently be joining us for the rest of the session. I'm surprised he hasn't Zoom bombed us already. You can go over there now. But I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how funding for that works, when students should be looking for it, how they seek those opportunities out. Would you mind taking a shot at that while I fight with my cat?
Absolutely. Be nice to Little Bear. So the question was the question out there was about job opportunities on campus. So there are opportunities for students to work part-time on campus. We actually have students that work in a variety of offices. Students can work. We've had students in our office, students work in the library system, the dining hall system, athletics. There are just so many opportunities for part-time work that allow students to meet their student contribution. So essentially earn sort of spending money for books and personal expenses. I would encourage you all to look at our student employment site. And we will try to put up the link to that at the end, but it's princeton.edu/SE for student employment. That is a great resource for jobs that are available on campus. So yes, certainly that is an option. And I mean, in possibly 6 years I've been at Princeton, I've never spoken with a student who's wanted to work on campus and just hasn't been able to find a job. So I think that's a really great thing. So the opportunities are certainly out there. And then to Keith's second question about funding for the summer. So over the summer, you know, there's so many things that you can choose to do. You can choose to work on something independent. You can choose to do something with Princeton. I know that we sort of preface a lot of what we're saying with, we don't know what will happen next year given sort of the ongoing health crisis, but in past years, there are things like global seminars that take students to different countries over the summer. Those global seminars are oftentimes partially funded through the department that is hosting them. And so it's always a good idea to begin those discussions with the department early if it's something that you are interested in doing. And they will have all the information about applying for funding. Oftentimes students, if they need to meet any sort of small gap, that's where our office would come in for the summer. Our office funds the academic year, which is fall and spring. But to help students meet these global seminar expenses for the summer, we do offer small subsidized loans offered by Princeton. So you'd be borrowing a loan from the university that is subsidized, which means that it does not accrue interest while you're a student, and it does not require payment while you're a student. That loan also has a 9-month grace period after you graduate before it enters repayment, and that repayment is a period of 10 years. So as far as student loans go, it's a loan with very good terms. And so those are conversations that we have with students when they're thinking about going on a global seminar. We know oftentimes borrowing is something that you can feel is a risk. And so that's something that our office is happy to walk you through, give you all the information that you need in order to make that decision. But aside from funding from the department and then the way that our office helps fund, there is also something that's called the Student Activities Funding Engine, SAFE. Again, I'm getting that correct, right, guys? The Student Activities Funding Engine, where you can apply for funding from different pockets of money from sort of all over the university. So SAFE is another great resource that students can tap into for summer activities.
Great. So we're at about 15 minutes left. So I think I'd at this point just like to throw this open for Q&A. I hope kind of this quick tour through what the first 9 months or so of the program might look like is helpful. But if you do have questions sort of extending out from there and what junior and senior year might look like, we're happy to field those too. There's a couple in here that we can field right now, if Little Bear allows me. So one would be if you were currently slated to come in with sophomore standing, would you be able to drop to a freshman and keep the credits and thereby double major? Unfortunately, the answer is no. So the downside to coming in as a freshman, besides if you consider the extra year a downside, is we do ask you then to sacrifice those credits and you would have to come in as a fall term freshman with no courses. Of course, if you do the summer program with us, you would have one course. Another question that I'd like to delegate to Cecily, it's a somewhat complicated answer, is how many credits is a certificate or minor program, and what is the sort of relationship between concentration credits and if they can be used towards a certificate?
Sure, thanks. So Princeton doesn't have minors, but certificates can function sort of similarly insofar as they can give you an interesting lens on the work you're doing in your concentration, or they can allow you to pursue an interest that doesn't feel like it has a direct connection with your major, but it's an important skill set for you as someone with a range of, interesting and, wide-ranging interests. So you can, I can't answer the question fully because each certificate program has a different set of requirements. Many of them you apply for at the end of the spring of your sophomore year. Some of them have rolling applications and you can apply for them at different moments during your time at Princeton. One thing that I think you'd want to think about is seeing them as opportunities, but not things you should feel stressed about collecting. So sometimes students will come to me and say like, I'm doing 3 certificates, but realistically, a lot of certificates require that some aspect of your independent work is informed by the certificate. So it has to all fit, the puzzle has to fit together well. So, you know, look at them, check them out, explore them, and keep options open.
Great. We have a question clearly earmarked for Sylvia about what happens given the financial aid package if a student also receives a third-party scholarship. Could you walk us through that process, please?
Absolutely. So all outside scholarships first begin to reduce the student contribution. So the student contribution is a standard amount of $3,500 that is expected to go toward your books and personal expenses. If, as in the example in the question, you receive a $1,000 scholarship, it'll reduce your student contribution expectation to $2,500, and then the $1,000 will pay out to your student account with the rest of your university grant. And that'll continue to happen until we get the student contribution down to 0. So any resource above $3,500 will reduce the university grant so that we can make room for the full scholarship in your award. However, if we do have to reduce university grant, you can recuperate the amount of university aid that was reduced toward the purchase of educational technology, such as a laptop. And that can be done once throughout your Princeton career. So if you have a recurring scholarship that causes your student contribution to be reduced every year, you can only recuperate the reduced grant once during your time.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to encourage our attendees to add a bunch of questions so we have some in the queue. The good news is some of you sent a bunch in ahead of time, so I have a giant list of them, so I'm just going to ask them now myself. My personal favorite one in here was, and I quote, "Is it stressful to be around such brilliant people?" I think I'm going to offload that one to Alex because as an alum, he's someone who can directly speak to that.
Yeah, it's a good question, especially not being a brilliant person myself. But no, I think I remember entering, my first year and being intimidated. But I think one thing you find about Princeton and the culture here is that people are definitely very academically motivated, but not to this, to the extent of being this cutthroat kind of, or just academics or achievement at all cost kind of mentality. I think a lot of students choose Princeton and come here because it is a very welcoming and open culture where a lot of students are interested in getting to know each other and learning from each other in the classroom, sure, but also beyond that as well. So I think you don't find people are judging or different. I think so. I mean, I think this would be a good question to ask some of our current transfer students as well when you get the chance, because I think we've had some of them say that entering as transfer students, this new cohort, that they felt there'd be a stigma or they'd be judged differently. And I think some of them have said that it's kind of the opposite. Students are just interested to know about you and not are you brilliant, are you awesome as well, but how and why, and it's just in a different way. So yeah, I think that trepidation is definitely normal. I know I felt it. I know maybe I still feel it, like reading all the applications and how smart and amazing and interesting you all are. But I think it's a very very down to earth place where people are very accepting and very interested in each other.
Thanks, Alex. And that's actually a pretty good segue to another question on here, which I think, Cecily, between the two of us, we can split this one. Would you say that the average transfer student requires or seeks more or less academic advising than a non-transfer student? I'll let you think for a minute, Cecily. So my initial answer to that, since I advise all the transfer students and prior to this job did a lot of advising with non-transfers, is maybe slightly more on the front end for the sophomores who have kind of a more complicated entry into the curriculum because you already have 9 classes, but otherwise definitely less. And I think the reason for that is just because you all have a lot more experience navigating complicated academic spaces. And so Princeton does have its own kind of set of Byzantine rules for how things function, and it takes a little while to learn those, sure. but you've successfully navigated those before. We have seen that in your transcripts. That's how you got in. And so when it comes to how we've seen transfer students attack their classes, I would say that they do it in a really disciplined, really organized, really emotionally mature way. In particular, one of the things that I've noticed about my transfer students is just kind of the emotional resilience. A B plus is not an existential crisis. They bounce back from what they perceive as academic setbacks, I think, in a really forthright and impressive way. And so, I would say that there will be a lot of concrete questions that are complicated questions that you're going to want to have answers to. And that's what people like me and Cecily are here for. And we are happy to be there for you to answer them. But if underlying that question is kind of a sense of, as a transfer student, should you be worried you can hang at Princeton with the other students? You shouldn't be worried about that at all, right? We have 2 years of wild success with our students coming in and doing really well. So I just don't think you need to be concerned about that. Cecily?
Yeah, let me kind of echo that, but also sort of flip it around and say that I've personally, in my work as director of studies, sought out getting to know the transfer students because they've been so interesting to talk to, have brought such thoughtful vantage points on their education, and have been so curious about what Princeton offers. I've been really impressed by how transfer students who have passed higher ed experience show up even more curious and eager and seem to resist, as Keith was saying, falling prey to worrying too much about grades or worrying too much that they should be doing certain things. And that's been really exciting to get to know. It makes the intellectual climate for all students more rich. And the more you should feel that seeking out advising and conversations and resources and faculty and fellow students, that's just all to your advantage. So there's no too much, and we're just so glad to have you in our midst.
That seems like a good segue too. What is school spirit like on campus? I'll throw that open to anyone.
I mean, I can jump in because I've got some of it behind me, as you can see.
Yeah,
I
Alex
mean,
is good for large stocks of Princeton swag.
yeah, I mean, behind me and on me as well. I mean, you'll grow to love black and orange for sure. I mean, I think orange is a perfect color for us because it's very loud, and I think it speaks a lot about the passion I think students have for the community and for that Princeton community. Even around whether it's our athletic programs, a football jersey behind me, or rallies we have, or just student community and so forth. Or I think it's definitely a very strong community from start to finish. And finish is not when you graduate. Finish is as long as you live. Honestly, I mean, I think you would definitely have alumni like me who don't leave campus, but most of them do. But they keep coming back, and they keep I think reliving that school spirit. We tell our students this is not a several year commitment here. This is 70 years, I mean, or more. I mean, in terms of you kind of being a part of this Princeton community and embodying this Princeton spirit for life wherever you go, and hopefully you'll come back because we have our reunions events every year where you'll just kind of reconnect with campus. And one of my favorite traditions, I think someone asked an advanced question about traditions. I always mention what we call the P-Raid, or the Princeton Parade, which is the end of a reunions event, which is a 3-day event. The P-Raid itself is just all the classes in chronological order going down the main area of campus and wearing some of the most outrageous orange and black outfits you've ever seen. So I think it's a really good embodiment of that school spirit. That is something that I think really stays with the community kind of in those ways, but also in a lot more practical ways beyond that as well.
Sylvia or Cecily, do you want to fill that one too?
No, I thought that's a great answer. Yes, the P-Raid is something to behold.
It is something to behold.
Yeah.
I would just add that I think what I've been amazed by is how many different ways there are to be a Princeton student and engage with campus life. And that means that's true even just for the individual student. They can choose every year to have a different way they're living campus life because there's so many different and cool things to do.
One quick question, be honest, how is the Wi-Fi? I'm going to guess at the moment it's spectacular because there can't possibly be too many hands on it, but I'm guessing you're asking in ordinary times, and I think the answer is pretty good, but not perfect. Does that seem right to everyone? Okay, I'm going to treat the fact that no one's shaking their head very strongly as a reason to agree. We had a specific question about whether there are specific pre-med advisors and whether there are opportunities for students interested in medical fields. Yes, absolutely. I would encourage you to go Google health professions advising at Princeton. There's an entire office that's devoted to that. It's actually directly downstairs from my office. And they do a lot to help students prepare for medical school. They help students think through curricularly what is a good set of classes to prepare for medical school, so they kind of serve as an additional academic advisor. They help students seek out internships or the ability to shadow doctors. They help with getting ready for exams. They help with the application process to medical school. So I think that health professions advising in some ways is a good microcosm of Princeton's approach to professional development, which is to give you just an incredibly resource-rich support system that provides a whole lot of one-on-one customized mentoring and advising to help you achieve the goals that you set for yourself. So HPA is a very structured program because obviously we have a lot of students that are very interested in medical school, but it's by no means the only program like that at Princeton. I think you'll find that one of our real competitive advantages over other schools is our ability to get you one-on-one attention with advisors who really know their stuff. Question about assigned student housing. I'm afraid I'm going to have to treat that one as an I don't know right now on grounds of COVID. Once we have a clear idea of what the fall is going to look like, it's going to be a lot easier to say. I've been in communication with housing already with things that we know about our enrolled students to get a sense of what that's going to look like. So I will probably be able to share with each of you, probably best in a one-on-one setting, about my best guess or where I think those conversations are going. But right now, we're just not in a position to be able to say. Oh, and I like one that's sort of recreational. So let's do this one last, and then we'll let you go. Are there places not terribly far from campus to camp, mountain bike, etc.? If so, how far? Does anyone want to field this one, or I can take it?
You go for it, Keith.
Oh, come on. Some of you are outdoors people.
There are a lot of great state parks, and I think we have 4 national parks in New Jersey. I mean, so there's a lot of good outdoorsy stuff. I think a lot of people see the kind of the urban areas and the suburban areas. But yeah, I mean, even within kind of walking distance, like there are a lot of good national park state parks and whatnot where you can bike, kayak. I think there's kayaking rental I drive by every day on the way to work. So yeah, there are a lot of outdoorsy places in New Jersey, in this area, and also down south of here.
Yeah, it's probably a little surprising for those of you who haven't been in New Jersey. If you just look at a map of where Princeton is, it looks like, okay, so this is directly on the corridor between Philadelphia and New York, so it must be as urban as possible. And while certainly there's some truth to that, there are a lot of really impressive green spaces just a little bit west of Princeton are the Sourland Mountains, which mountains is probably a little strong. I don't really think they're quite mountains, but at least it's a very beautiful space where you can do a lot of those things. I think we'll do one more and then we'll close. So last question, what do you feel transfer students struggle with the most during their first semester? What do you think commonly catches transfer students off guard? Princeton, it's a rigorous curriculum. I mean, it's a lot of work. The classes are challenging. So students sometimes do have a little bit of academic culture shock in making that transition to be able to deal with those classes. But as I said before, I think one of the things that's also great about Princeton is while we might put some imposing challenges in front of students, we never ask you to do it alone. There's always a very strong support system in place, advising, mentoring, peer tutoring, all kinds of resources that are available because we want you to succeed. I mean, nobody at Princeton throws a challenge in front of you to watch you struggle, right? It's always a challenge that's there because we think your ability to get over that challenge is going to facilitate your ability to cultivate the skills that you need to become an expert in your field and move on to the next stage of your career. So, we don't want to say that coming to Princeton and making that choice means that your academics are going to be a breeze. They're not. We want to be totally honest about that. But we also want you to recognize that you'd be coming into a really supportive environment that's going to give you every opportunity and every resource to succeed. So it seems to me we are out of time. So first of all, I'd like to thank all of our attendees for making it. I hope you will choose to join us on Thursday when you get to speak to other students and not academic administrators. And I would like to thank Alex, Sylvia, and Cecily for making the time. I feel like we should give a special shout out and thank you to Cecily, who came on what at Princeton is known as Dean's Date, which is the day on which Princeton students need to turn in all of their graded written work, which means as an advisor, she has been incredibly busy today. So it was super generous for her to make it. So thank you all. I believe we are going to be posting contact information for each of us and other resources before we in fact log off. Hooray, there it is. So take a screenshot. Please feel free to reach out. You've heard from Alex and I already. We're perfectly happy to have continued conversations with you as you make this very important decision. And Alex, did you have anything left?
Yeah, just want to echo everything Keith said. Thanks to the panelists and thanks to all of you for chiming in, for tuning in rather on, I'm sure, what is a busy day or evening, depending on where you're coming from. So I want to plug a couple more things. You already seen a bunch of info for us. We're continually updating the preview website with new content, so keep an eye out for that. We'll also send that to you, and also another plug for the student hangout, we're calling it, for later this week, which will be with some of our current students. It's not just going to be a panel of like 3 or 4 of us like talking to you like we have been for the last hour, but it'll be kind of a two-way, very informal conversation where we're in less of a Q&A, where you can just chat with them candidly and hear from them from their experiences as well. And like I said, if you're not up for that or you can't get enough of that, you can also sign up for Tiger Talks as well if you haven't already done so. But they're really excited to talk to you and hear from you, as are we. So thanks so much for tuning in.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. We hope to see you Thursday, and we absolutely hope to see you in the fall.